Listen up or run for cover. Dropping knowledge from the people who have it to the people who need it. The real Rubin, Bradley Bombs is dropping
What it is, Brad Lee back again with another episode of Dropping Bombs. Today in the studio, folks, I've got a real treat for you. You may have heard of him, especially if you're into the political information age. Dave Rubin, welcome to the show.
I like that, Brad. The political information age. It sounds very, very matrixy. I feel that I can really bring it, that I feel I have to bring it just because the title of the show. I can't mess around today like I normally would.
You got to bring it. You know, I got a bunch of listeners. They're called the Bomb Squad, fondly referred to as the Bomb Squad. You got a bunch of different types of people really listening to the show. Mostly I talk about business. Sometimes I'll talk about political shit, but not often. For the listeners, if you guys don't know who Dave Rubin is, you're probably underneath a rock, but the guy's got a big ass YouTube presence. He's used to be a comedian from what I understand, but he's a political commentator. He's got a book that's crushing it, and he's the creator of the host of the Rubin Report. If you guys don't know who he is, Google his ass by the time we're done and frickin' check him out because he's got some shit to say. So Dave, welcome to the show. I appreciate you spending some time with us today. I have a bunch of questions. Ultimately though, because you're in the political world, I want to know, like, what the hell's going on right now?
That's the question of the day, man. I mean, that's it. That really could sum up all of 2020. What the hell is going on? It seems like we have almost nobody who knows what's going on and very few people who are even ballparking something close to truth. It's like basically everyone wakes up every day, you open up your Twitter feed or you go on YouTube or Facebook, wherever you get your news, and you just react to stuff all day long. Something horrible happened yesterday, a riot, a protest, pandemic, Trump said this, Biden forgot his name, like just this endless sort of hamster in a wheel thing that's keeping us all crazy. So as for what is going on, I think we are basically in a war for reality. We're in a reality war right now, where depending on what information you listen to, what shows you listen to, what newspaper you read, et cetera, that is the worldview that you kind of coalesce around. And that can be very, very different than what your neighbor's worldview is, or even the person that you're sleeping in bed with, if you guys don't take in the same information. So we now have a war for reality. What is true and what is not true? And then you throw in big tech and the way we're manipulated by algorithms and shadow banning and all the rest of it. And it's like, this was the point of the Matrix. This was the point of the movie, The Matrix, that the humans at this point, we are just the batteries. We are the organic material, the batteries for the digital world. And the more time we spend in the digital world, the more it needs to basically suck our battery and suck our life force away. And it's a really weird time. And that's why everything feels so crazy, because the digital world in some ways is starting to supersede this world, the real world. I mean, we're doing this right now through the digital cables, despite the fact that we're both human beings. This used to be done, in person, and you chat with somebody, you might do it in front of a group of people. And now everything's going online, and it's a wonderful thing in a certain way, and it can connect you, but it can also make you crazy. And, you say, what the hell's going on? And it's like, it's really hard to figure that out.
Well, you got like Biden, who can't even form a sentence. And again, yeah. I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm left or far right. I'm neither. I don't even know what I am. That's how unpolitical I am. The temperature of the environment right now is you better get political. You better figure out what's going on. So I start looking around and I see Biden, and I'm not sure if it's edited, but like you said, he can't even remember his name. How is that possible? How is it possible that the Democratic National Committee would pick him as their best option? Someone that can't remember shit is their best option. What's the play behind it?
I've been saying for a while that the scandal is the non-scandal, meaning the scandal is not that he either has dementia or the beginnings of Alzheimer's or some other cognitive problem. That's not the scandal, although that is a scandal. The scandal is the non-scandal. The scandal is that no one in the media will talk about it. We all see it. Everyone online sees it. You see the clips.
Yeah.
He can't remember what he's saying. He can't remember who his wife is. He forgets and slurs words, all of that stuff. And by the way, I don't mean this to be glib or sarcastic or anything. You know, my grandmother had dementia, and I spent a lot of time with her when I was doing stand-up in New York City because my days were free, and I did spend a couple of years really taking care of her. And I've seen what that thing is like, and it's brutal and it's horrific. But I think what happened with the Democrats was they saw this insurgency, this far left insurgency, the Bernie crew, the young socialist crew, AOC and Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar. They saw that insurgency, and the more moderate ones, of which there are not that many anymore, but the more moderate ones, let's say like the Hillary machine and the Biden machine, the Obama machine, they said, all right, we got to do something to stop this. And basically, because there's almost nobody left, they were like, all right, well, Biden's the only one with any name recognition. He'll remind people of the old days and he'll stop it. And then I think what happened was they didn't expect him to break down this quickly, but he is breaking down this quickly. That's just the reality of it. I tweeted out this morning that, you know, if you think back to only, it's about 7 months ago, although it seems like a lifetime ago. Remember when Mike Bloomberg got in those debates, those two debates, and he was just absolutely horrible. And I really believe what happened there was Biden was leading in the polls, and they knew that the rest of them were going to have to come after Biden. So the DNC or whoever's behind the operation basically was like, Bloomberg, you got to get in there to take the fire so that Biden doesn't get destroyed, because after Super Tuesday, we're just going to have everybody coalesce behind Biden, but we can't have him destroyed before then. And I think in essence, that's what happened. And the fact that the media won't talk about these problems, if you're a Democrat, if you're a good person who's a Democrat, and there are many of such people, you have to know you're voting for Kamala Harris. You are not voting for Joe Biden. That's just the sad, depressing truth.
Better listen up to that one, folks. That's what I keep saying. I almost think it's a plan. You know, like they know that that's the case, but who's picking?
They know.
But who's picking Kamala?
Well, so that's like the $1 million question, right? It's like when you say they or the DNC, it's like, who is it? Are we saying it's Hillary Clinton's machinery? Is it the Obama people? Is it George Soros or some other conspiracy thing? Like, I don't know what the answer to the they part is. I don't think anyone outside of it, whatever it is, knows. But I think if you're just like a clear thinking person, you can look at the information in front of us. We're not idiots. We're not children. There is something wrong with the guy. Everyone knows it, and they won't say it. And the media covers for him. And Trump basically is like, I'm not playing this game, and I'm going to call it out, and I'm going to call out the media, and I'm going to call out the rest of you. And I think that's why he gets so much underground support. Because although Trump is obviously a bullshit artist, he's a bullshit artist the way the rest of us are bullshit artists. He sees something and he calls it out. So the more that they pretend that there's nothing wrong with Biden, the more that they're going to actually drive support to Trump, which is why Trump had a great move yesterday. You may have seen this, where this MMA fighter, I think his name's Tim Kennedy, he had on his show, basically Rogan, I think, said that he would host a 4-hour debate between Biden and Trump. Trump retweeted it and said, yeah, I'm in. Now, Trump knows that obviously that's not going to happen, but there's no loss for Trump, because if Biden in any capacity said yes, well, Trump could sit there for 4 hours, but we all know that Biden can't sit there for 4 hours. So Trump knows how to use the public and how to bullshit us in a way that oddly, I'm starting to think is more real than the other reality that these guys are pushing on us.
So you used to be left. Now you're more right, correct?
Yeah.
Now, what made you go from left to right?
Well, I think most people grow up kind of lefty, meaning that if you just grow up in America, there's a certain set of ideas that you're going to get, meaning you're going to get them from the media, from television, from movies. You're going to get it from education, the political system. And it's something like, oh, Democrat is good, Republican is bad. Liberals care about poor people, conservatives care about money. Democrats are nice, Republicans want war. Like there are these just like basic things that you just get through culture, so that I think most young people in America grow up with sort of a lefty bent. That's the default setting, the factory setting that they kind of grow up with. And I was a political science major in college, and I just kind of bought into that stuff. I just bought into that system. And a couple of years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, I was on the Young Turks network, and they're a pretty far left YouTube network, news network. And there was a lot of things that I started seeing that I didn't like out of the left. This rush to call everybody they disagreed with racist. There was almost never an argument made. If we disagreed with you, you were a racist. If we disagreed with you, you were a homophobe. If we disagreed with you, you were a bigot or a sexist or the rest of, those pejorative phrases. And I thought, this can't be right. The math doesn't add up here. How could it possibly be right that we are so morally right and correct about everything? And it's not just that we're so right about everything, but everyone that we disagree with is the worst thing in the world. Like that just doesn't add up. And the more I started thinking about it, and then of course, what happened was over the last 5 years, we've seen just the assault on free speech, speakers being banned at college campuses and, buildings burned down and everything we see going on now. And it's all coming out of the left. And the left used to be, back in the day, the left used to be the side that would say, I may disagree with what you say, but I'll defend with my life your right to say it. And now, in effect, the left is pushing an idea that if you don't agree with us, you're a bigot and a racist, and we're done with you. So I think that started my wake up. And then I think the next part is probably what you'll find most interesting, which is that once I started waking up, then I started shifting on a lot of things. And as I started going independent and growing my own business, well, if you're going to be a businessman, and I'm a small businessman and I've got several employees and I've got a startup company now and a whole bunch of other stuff, but if you're going to be a successful businessman, you want the government out of your way. You want light regulation, if any regulation. You want low taxes, things like that. So when I started exploring those ideas more, especially when I started talking to more libertarian leading economists, then I really started opening up myself to things. And now the things and ideas that I believe in and talk about are they're not just ideas to me because they're the way I live my life. They're the way I build my businesses, which I'm very proud to say are pretty successful. So it was a wake up call. And then it was just like, all right, well, here's reality. And reality to me seems to fit a little more along, let's say, a right leaning perspective.
Yeah, but not too far right, correct?
No, not too far right. I mean, I don't even know what people mean by really far right, but if you mean by far right somehow racist or something like that, then of course not. I want my simple philosophy is individual rights. That's it. Individual rights. I want you to have the exact same rights that I have. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what gender you are. I don't care I don't care what gender you identify as. I want everybody to have the exact same rights. That's basically all a government can do. And then I believe in laissez-faire economics. I believe in the light touch of government. That's it. And by the way, that's exactly how the system was set up. I mean, that's what the founders believed in. And we're very far from that today.
But what you just described sounds to me like the right. The far right, when I say far right, are the conspiracy people, the QAnons, the people that think there's pedophilia and vampires in the White House and, some of that far-fetched. And by the way, again, conspiracies are always conspiracies until they come out and it's true. And believe it or not, I think there's a statistic that shows like 70% of conspiracies end up being true.
Yeah, well, look, as far as QAnon and that kind of stuff, I mean, I don't spend any time in those circles paying attention to that. I see some stuff every now and again come across my Twitter feed. But if by right we're talking about that, then that has nothing to do with me. Although I do think you make an interesting point that all of us that were conspiracy theorists, a couple of years ago, let's say, now a lot of that stuff is starting to be exposed and come true. So it's a little bizarre in that sense. When they used to talk about, oh, that these people want like a globalist government, and people would say, no, that's a conspiracy theory, except that really is true. There was a massive push over the last 10 years to create a sort of one world government. And the European Union was a huge example of that. And what happened? What was Brexit about? The people of the UK said, no, we don't want a one world government or a one European government. We want to govern ourselves the way we have for hundreds of years. And there's been a huge pushback against it. Now, that might have been a conspiracy theory to say that, there's a one world government on the way or a globalist government, but it kind of has proven true. So anyway, when I say right, I mean individual rights, Constitution, get out of my way, let me live my life. I don't care how you live your life as long as you're not doing it on my property. That's the simple version.
Yep. So you believe zero of the shit that's out there.
Zero of the shit that's out there. We may have to whittle that down a little bit more. But I don't think that whatever, I'm honestly not even totally sure what all of that stuff is, but I don't think that somehow a ring of pedophiles is running the government or something like that. You know what I mean? I'm not saying there's no elements of any of those things that are true, because the world is extremely weird and all that. But you know what? I'll give you a quote from a guy whose book I have right behind me. Carl Sagan, who is a great scientist and science communicator, he always used to say that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and I try to use that. So when people say something crazy to me or something that sounds really outlandish, I don't just dismiss it just like that. But it's like, all right, well, now that's a pretty extraordinary claim. The world is run by a group of pedophiles. Well, now you're going to have to give me some extraordinary evidence on that, and I have not seen that.
Yeah, well, neither have I. Supposedly JFK Jr. is coming back to tell us all real soon.
Oh, he's back in business?
Yeah. You haven't heard any of those?
The plane never crashed?
No. Apparently he went underground because he wanted to revenge his father, and the CIA killed him. So he's been underground 20 years, and that's who Q is.
Do we have a date that he's coming back by?
Soon.
I want to prepare.
Soon.
Just soon.
Yeah.
Soon. It's definitely happening soon. Okay.
You got to follow the Q drops. I don't necessarily follow it, but I hear a lot of it, and it's like I'm always wondering, like, do the political pundits actually find any merit in this, or is it just complete, like, you got to be stupid to believe that?
Well, I can tell you this, that one of the things that you see right now is just in the last week or so, people talking about QAnon, which again, I don't really know what it is. Nor pay that much attention to it.
You haven't watched the videos?
I haven't. I've
Dude,
never watched it.
You got to go watch the videos, man. There's some compelling.
God.
There's
I'm a busy man.
I know,
but
there's
a lot going on.
Dude, there's some compelling shit in those videos. It makes you go, wow, like, is this for real? And I went through them and started Googling. But of course, can you trust Google anymore? I don't even understand.
What I tell you, we're all in this hamster wheel right now. And one of the things that I think is interesting related to this is the way that in the last week or so, suddenly mainstream media is talking about QAnon. Like they're suddenly like, that's, they used to call everyone alt-right. And then that stopped sticking. Then everyone was far right, or they were Nazis, or all this stuff. Now it's about QAnon. Like they always try to find this sort of amorphous, undefinable boogeyman that describes all of the bad people or the deplorables or whatever you want to call it. And they've just started percolating that up in the last week. But, we've got, we're still in mid-September right now. We've got about 6 weeks before this election. And if you think it's weird right now, if you think it's bizarre right now, you got another thing coming, man, because the next 6 weeks are going to be bananas.
Do you think we'll see Biden debate Trump?
I truly think it's 50-50 at this point. I think the fact that it will most likely be done remote obviously helps Biden, because he'll be able to have someone in his ear telling him what to say and helping him when he forgets things and everything else. I think if Trump was smart and television savvy, which he is, he'll make a point of saying that during the debate. Who's talking to you in your ear? Do you have an IFB in there, and what's going on? Now, of course, they'll have to have an IFB because they need to hear each other. But Trump would be wise to say, is someone on your team feeding you information right now? Like really kind of call him out on it. And by the way, Biden can do the same thing. I don't know that. I think the level that he's breaking down at is happening so much faster than they anticipated, that it's becoming unmasked too soon. I think they really just wanted to get him to the election, to have that Hail Mary pass that somehow he beats Trump, right? We get past that. And then within 6 months, they just announced that he's got some medical problem. Let's not forget, the guy's had 2 brain aneurysms. I mean, he's lived through a lot on top of some really horrific personal stuff. And, you know, his kid, I think 2 kids died in a car accident. Might be one, I might be mistaken on that. But I mean, he's lived through a lot on top of the stresses of being vice president for 8 years and everything else. But I don't think they thought it was going to break down this quickly. I think the plan was get him in, he'll step down in a few short months, and then Kamala takes over. And I don't know if you saw the video that's going around this morning, but there's a verbal gaffe by Kamala Harris where she says a Harris administration. So, you know, I'm sure your friends over at Q are having a ball with that one.
Yeah. Don't associate me. Don't associate me. I don't want to be known as a Q guy, but I do want to be known as an open individual. Like, in other words, I am open to listening to all sides. Like you said, or whoever it was, Capote, who said extraordinary evidence?
Carl Sagan, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Carl Sagan. I like that. You know, I'm open to listening, but I need to see some proof. Do you think it's even possible that Biden wins? I mean, is this going to be a close race, or is this going to be like a blowout?
You know, it's really hard to say right now. And the bigger issue, I think, is that, especially what we're seeing out of mainstream media right now, they're priming the pump to tell people that if Trump wins, the election will be illegitimate, that the election will not be kosher, that something will have gone wrong. I mean, they're already telling people basically Trump's not going to leave office. That's a seriously scary thing, because for whatever the flaws of America, you know, in 240 plus years, we've always had a peaceful transition of power. I mean, even if you think back to Obama handing over power to Trump, Obama hated Trump. Trump hated Obama, but the machine worked, right? The machine allowed for the polar opposite of one guy, Obama, to go to the other guy, Trump, and it was peaceful and it was okay. The media is really ramping us to a place where people are not going to accept the results. And I think you can make that argument on either side. If Biden wins, Trump supporters won't accept it. And if Trump wins, Biden supporters. So I don't think this is purely indicative of one side. However, the media, which obviously likes the Democrats more and likes Biden more, they're really pushing this idea that Trump won't step down and Trump's going to want a 3rd term and all of this really crazy stuff. Look, it's hard to be in the prediction game. It's always hard to be in the prediction game, but I think right now it's particularly hard because of pandemic and riots and general state of craziness and everything else. I would say this, my gut feeling is that Trump is going to win, and he's going to win in a bigger way than he won last time. And the reason for that is, let's say just for a second that only the same people who voted last time vote. So this obviously isn't totally scientific, but like ballpark, roughly the same amount of people vote, and it's the same type of people. Well, I could see a lot of people who voted for Hillary who maybe didn't love Hillary, but they were like, she's a woman, or I just really don't like Trump, or whatever it is. There was some enthusiasm towards Hillary. There's no enthusiasm towards Biden. I don't know anyone that's enthusiastic towards Biden. You may hate Trump, but you're not enthusiastic towards Biden, right? No. But I could see a good amount of people who voted for Hillary who were just like, you know what? Something's wrong with Biden. The rest of the young Democrats are completely insane. All of the Democratic-run cities are burning right now. Every city that's on fire right now is a Democratic-run city. That's just a fact. So you know what? I'm going to suck it up and I'm going to go for Trump, because at least Trump seems to like America. He seems to like capitalism. Yeah, he's got crazy hair and he's big and orange, and that's weird. And I wish he tweeted less. But I'm going to move that way. But try to do that thought experiment the other way. It's almost impossible. Now, you voted for Trump last time. Now, maybe there's something about the policies you don't like, although I think the policies have been pretty good. I mean, we almost have peace in the Mideast. I thought that was something we all wanted, but apparently we don't all want that anymore. But try to imagine someone who supported Trump last time being like, you know, I'm so frustrated with Trump that I'm going to basically vote for this guy with dementia and the socialists. It's very hard to make the leap that way. I think you can make the leap the other way, but it's hard to make the leap that way. So for that alone, I think Trump's going to win. And by the way, I don't think any of this is going to show up in the polls, because Trump supporters don't show up in the polls. They don't want to be polled. They don't want to go on the record because people know you could be destroyed and cancel mobs will come after you and everything else.
Yeah. Do you believe in the presidential election the way that we're supposed to? In other words, the Electoral College. Educate me on that.
Yeah, well, I'm a tremendous supporter of the Electoral College. I've done a couple shows on this with some experts on this. Look, in essence, if we did not have the Electoral College, campaigning would only take place in the big cities. And the big cities, although they are a big part of America and you've got big populations there, would leave out almost all of rural America, all of the flyover states. I hate that phrase, but the middle of America. And if we are to be the United States of America, if people that live in California are to have any connection to people who live in Idaho and then people who live in Colorado and New Jersey, well, then we need something that brings us together. We need a representative government. So I don't see we have a pretty great system. The idea that each state gets 2 senators, regardless of population. So every state is represented equally. But then in the House of Representatives, based on population, you can have more congressmen or less congressmen. And then as far as the Electoral College, you're going to have California has a ton of electoral votes, and a state like Delaware has a very small amount. I don't know that it's an absolutely perfect system, but I don't know that perfect systems exist. All of these systems were built by humans and we're imperfect. So the idea that we would build perfect systems, I think is kind of crazy. But I think our system is right. And I think you have to look at all the people that want to tear everything down. It's very easy to tear everything down, right? Like you usually talk about business, and in business, like we could all wreck a business, right? It doesn't matter what the business is. It's a restaurant, it's a shoe store, it's e-commerce, doesn't matter what it is. Any one of us could take over a business and wreck it in a day. It's very hard to build a business. And that's the same thing that I would say about government. All of these people that want to tear down statues, destroy the universities, get rid of the Electoral College, add Supreme Court justices, just change the whole freaking thing. Well, it's easy to do all that, but do you have any idea how difficult it is to build those institutions, build those functioning systems? I don't think they have any idea, and I think that's why chaos is a lot easier to produce than order.
The electors, let's call them. Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
The electors. Do they tabulate what the constituency mandated and have to vote that way, or they vote however they want?
Technically, as far as I know, they don't have to. So you could have a situation. Yeah.
Well.
People need to fact check me on this one because I don't want to spread fake news. But technically, the people that are the electors, meaning that they control those votes.
The ones that truly determine the president.
The ones that truly, yeah. So a state, it is not impossible, and I think maybe it happened once, maybe. But again, this is really where people. It's a great question, and people should fact check this. The electors do not have to vote the way the state votes, and we hear rumors about this sort of thing every couple years. There was even in the Democratic primary last time. There was going to be a huge fight within the DNC. This isn't about Electoral College votes, but this is the way the Democrats do their super delegates and the rest of it, that there were going to be all of these people that were going to go for Bernie no matter what Hillary did or vice versa. So look, the broader point is that because these systems are imperfect, I think we all look and we're like, oh, that's the thing that's wrong and that's why it must be destroyed. I just don't know a better system. But what I would say is this, that if you were to look at how the Republicans go about doing their nomination process and how the Democrats do it, the Republicans do a much more honest nomination process. When the reason Trump won was because they give all of the votes go to the winner of each primary. So Trump won free and clear. He won. Nobody debated it. Nobody said, oh, you didn't win. The Democrats, A, they do it proportionally, but B, we saw what happened like in the Iowa straw poll where nobody knew who won and people are pulling votes from this one and that one. And now everybody wants to get mail-in voting. And it's like, man, we have so many variables right now. There's so little trust in the system. And on top of everything else, You want to add more voting by mail? That just seems absolutely crazy to me.
That seems ridiculous. I think personally, it's an illusion of choice. Your vote. I don't personally think we elect the president. I think we all vote in our vote and assume that we're getting a choice. But number one, who counts? Okay, who's counting all those fucking votes? First of all, second of all, it doesn't matter. It boils down to the 500 and what is it, 38 or however many electors they have. Those votes are who choose the president. That's why I think the presidency requires 275. Is that right?
I think, is it 279? Let's get a good. How many electoral votes do we need, Michael? Get me a number here. How many wins you the president? Is it 273, 279? We'll get a number. I got a fact checker right over here. I always keep a fact checker right next to me.
Yeah, so I think
get a number.
So I think those 538 people are the ones that elect the president. I don't believe
538. 538.
Hey, see, I don't know much about politics, but I did do a little research. Why? Well, because I want people to be aware of their local and state governments right now, because I think that's what you do control is your local and state. You're not picking the president.
Hold on, I got an update. We were both right. 538 is the total number. 270 is what you need to win.
270. Yeah, that makes sense.
So 538 is the total available.
Yeah.
You got to get 270 to win.
So I think it's an illusion of choice that you get to vote for the president. I don't really believe that your vote matters. I think it all goes in for an illusion of choice, and then 538 people get together and figure out who they want, and they vote that way. And I don't think you can do a damn thing about it.
So basically, you go into the booth, and all you're really doing is pulling the lever that opens up the curtain. It opens the curtain, it closes the curtain. You feel good about yourself, and you walk out.
That's
there.
it. Illusion.
You know, look, without going too far down, that conspiracy road, what I would say is this. I like what you said right before that, which is the local stuff. That's where you can influence things. That's really where you can influence things, and that's how the system is supposed to work. So look, I'm here in LA. You're in Vegas. We have very different economies, very, very different populations, all of that kind of stuff. I have a much better chance of affecting something that happens in my local community here in LA than I do by affecting the federal government. The same way you have a better chance if there was something going on in Vegas, they were trying to pass some ordinance that you really hated or some regulation that you really hated or whatever, a tax hike or whatever. You would have a much better chance of getting some people together and fighting that at the local level and getting your representative to move in a direction that you want him to move in, much better than getting the federal government to do anything. And that's what the founders wanted. That was the whole idea of federalism, that we're going to have all of these states, and the states are mostly going to do the stuff. So each state can have an economic policy, each state can have an education policy, and the rest of it. Some states right now have legalized marijuana, some don't. That's a beautiful thing, because if you live in a state that has legalized marijuana and you're happy, you can stay, and now the state's generating tax revenue, and hopefully they're using that money to something that you believe in. Or if you're completely against legalized marijuana and it adversely affects your life, guess what? Well, you can move to another state. So if you don't like what's going on in Colorado, you can move to Alabama. That's a beautiful thing, because then you have choice within the system. But if the federal government does everything, you have no choice. You have one choice, actually, which is to get the hell out.
Well, are you for or against legalized marijuana?
Oh, I'm completely for it. For
see,
it. I believe I have some upstairs.
Well, that's the thing, is like, are people that foolish to think if it's against the law, no one's going to do it? Because they're going to do it with or without the law. The law allows you to do it more controlled and obviously generate much needed revenue for states. Every state in the freaking United States should be for legalization of marijuana.
Yeah, I think where the conversation gets a little trickier, and I write a bunch about this in the book, is legalize marijuana, and I think a certain amount of psychedelics and that kind of stuff I have absolutely no problem with. I think where it gets a little messier is when you get into the seriously hardcore, highly addictive drugs, meth, opiates, that kind of stuff, which, although on one hand, at a personal level, if you want to put that stuff in your body, I don't want to use the force of government to stop you from doing it. But we do know, and most people know this, and even my really libertarian friends, I can kind of get them to admit this, if a crack den or a meth house open up next door to you, is that good or bad?
Bad.
And we all know the answer. We all know the answer is bad. We all know that there's going to be crime. We all know there's going to be overdoses and a whole series of other things. Nobody wants that next door to them. So when the extreme libertarians on this say, no, just legalize everything, I think you got to be a little careful for what you wish for. That's, by the way, why I don't call myself a libertarian, because I do believe you need some just unpleasant laws to just keep society in order. Because I don't want a crack den next door to me. But as far as marijuana and some psychedelics and some other stuff, and by the way, even on the hardcore stuff, and I've done most of it, but even on the hardcore stuff, I don't think you should be putting people in jail for extended sentences. If you caught, if you're just buying it, all right. But, if you're selling it or you're selling it to underage people, I think there's ways we could deal with this in a more mature way than we deal with it now.
For sure. For sure. Now, you used to be a stand-up comic. Is that right?
I used to be funny, man. It was a long time ago. Then politics got me.
Were you stand-up as in traveling around doing it or just attempting to do it?
Oh, no, I did stand up for 12 years in New York City, and I had all of the successes and failures of that. At one time, I was like the youngest comic ever passed at the Comedy Cellar, which is that's like the one club in New York City that really matters, down on Bleecker Street. And then I did the road for a year or two, which is, you don't want to wish that life on anybody because, you do a great gig somewhere in the middle of nowhere and you're feeling great and it's a sold out room and it's awesome and all that. But then you realize you're alone in a Best Western and there's no food and it's 3 a.m. and you're eating Skittles in bed and it's pretty freaking depressing. It's a tough life, the stand-up life. But all of that's changing now too, because with COVID, people aren't touring the way they are. And I kind of saw the tea leaves changing. I felt that this is sort of a little bit of like just the life of an artist, I suppose. But, my friends who were the best comics that I knew, the guys that were really saying something true and really doing something different, they pretty much all quit. The ones who kind of were the hacks and that were just not doing anything great, they're the ones that eventually made it to the Tonight Show and some of the other things, not without some exceptions. But, it's a tough life, man. And that's why a lot of comics end up going crazy or overdosing on drugs or the rest of it.
What was your plan? Just to be like a movie star comedian? Because if I was going to do it, that's what I'd be heading for. Like, the Kevin Hart's, the big time.
It's funny you say that because that is what a certain version of comics do. I'd say you have you could look at it sort of like two ways. You have a road to pick as a comic. Maybe there's three roads. So one road is you're a lifetime comedian, meaning you're like a George Carlin, where stand-up and doing new specials over decades, that is your life. That's a pretty rare thing, and I think Carlin is the best pure stand-up we ever had. Then there's the second road. The second road is more of like the TV comic. So that's more of like a Tim Allen or a Jerry Seinfeld, or a lot of the guys that are probably in Vegas right now, or that are usually in Vegas, where they, a Ray Romano, you do stand up for a while to perfect that persona so that you get the TV show. And then after the success of the TV show, you can do it when you want and you've got some money and you're good. And then the third one, which is the one that you're talking about, that's more like the Jim Carrey route, right? That's like, okay, I'm going to do stand up for a while, but now I'm going big on movies. And I'm going to become a major star that way. I think the guy who did it the most interesting way in many ways is Tim Allen, because Tim Allen kind of did a version of all of those. Tim is a really good and well-respected stand-up. He had a number one, a lot of people don't know this. Tim Allen is the only person in American history to have the number one movie, number one book, and number one TV show all at the same time. He had Home Improvement, obviously, was the number one TV show. His book, I think it was called Don't Stand Next to a Naked Man, or Don't Stand Too Close to a Naked Man, was the number one book. And The Santa Claus was the number one movie, all at the same time. Like, that's pretty freaking amazing. So, as a stand-up, you can kind of choose which path. And then, of course, the other path, although very few people choose it, is that you're just going to be a road comic. And that's the saddest of all paths.
Yeah, a buddy of mine got into comedy and dared me to get up and do it. So I jumped up for a set, if that's what you call it.
Uh-oh. How'd it go?
It went pretty well, actually. I think my material was phenomenal. I had the whole room busting up laughing. I did 20 minutes for my first thing. I got it on video, but
Jeez, for your first one, you did 20 minutes. People usually do 4 minutes for their first set.
Yeah, no, I did 23 minutes. Now, I had a couple of comics, professional comics there, and they said it was actually about 11 minutes worth of material that I took 23 minutes to do, which made sense because I belabored a few things. But the material was phenomenal, and that's just when I realized, man, this is going to be a tough road. So I said, I'll pass. I did it on a dare, but what was your plan, though? You had a plan, yes? You didn't just pick comedy out of the blue.
Well, my plan was, I honestly thought when I got out of college, my friends always said I was funny. All my friends were funny. And I always thought that one of us was going to be a comic, and nobody did it. So I was like, I'll try some stand-up. And the first time I went on stage, I got that initial laugh and I was hooked. I mean, you did it that one time. And the fact that you put it down after that is pretty surprising, because usually when people get that laugh, you're hooked. It's a drug, and you're like, holy shit, I need more of that, But I thought, I'm out of college. I'm going to start doing stand-up. I'll get some odd jobs to pay the bills. And I figured I'll do stand-up for a couple months, and then you get on the Tonight Show and you're good to go. Now, I started in May of 98, the same month that I graduated college. That's 22 years ago. It seems like many lifetimes ago for me. But at the time, the way it used to work, stand-up, if you think of the great comics, really in the 80s, the heyday of stand-up, some of the people I just mentioned, so Tim Allen and Jerry Seinfeld and Louis Anderson and Ellen DeGeneres, all these people, what did they do? They worked in the clubs for a couple years, and then you'd perfect that 5-minute set. You'd get on the Johnny Carson Tonight Show, and if Johnny liked you, everyone knows this story, he'd pull you aside, you'd get to sit down with him, and then you were made. You got your sitcom, and that was the road to success with stand-ups. Now, by 98, when I started, the sitcom world was already crumbling. Seinfeld went off the air in 98. There was already a change of the guard. That's when reality TV was kicking in. Game shows were kicking in. I think Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was just starting. And they weren't giving comic sitcoms. So I saw all of the guys that were a couple years ahead of me. They were supposed to be out of the clubs already. They were supposed to be on to bigger and better things, but they weren't. They were still stuck at the clubs. So I saw that glut. I saw that blockage in the pipe. And I was like, I got to start thinking about some other things. So I did it for a couple of years. And I actually ended up opening a couple of comedy clubs in New York City that were run by the comics. And we did pretty well. And that was my first foray into business and some of this stuff. But then as YouTube came around and as podcasts came around and everything else, I thought, that's what I should be devoting my time to. I actually remember one night particularly, I was doing stand-up in Times Square. And I was, one of like 12 comics, and I was maybe like 7th out of 12. Everyone does 10 or 15 minutes, something like that. And I freaking crushed it. I mean, I just had one of those sets where you just mop up the room, absolutely crushed it. And some kids were coming up to me afterwards outside the club. And they were going, you're great, you're great. And I remember one of them saying, what was your name again? What was your name again? And I was like, man, that's the problem. I went up there, I crushed it. These kids are saying hi to me, but they don't even know my name. And I'm just one of 12 guys. And they're going to go home and they're going to be like, I saw a stand-up show last night, and that white guy, he was on 7th out of 12. He was funny. But I remember thinking that's the problem. And then I thought, all right, if I can start doing some stuff on YouTube, podcasts, whatever the hell Twitter is at the time, that stuff, people will follow me. And they will know who I am. So that's kind of how I started making that transition. So I was a little early on that side because I just saw the tea leaves changing. And it kind of worked out, obviously, but I've seen a lot of guys that just felt, I'm just going to keep doing stand-up forever, the grind. And one day the miracle is going to happen. The agent's going to find me and make me a star. And it's like, that thing doesn't exist anymore. It's long gone.
Do you think that kind of teed up the whole Jordan Peterson story? For those of you that aren't aware, I think Dave toured the whole world with Jordan Peterson for like a year and a half. Yeah. Now, was that crazy as shit or what?
Truly, it was unbelievable. And when I think about it, it feels like a dream. It's almost hard to believe that I did it. We did about 110 shows in a year and a half.
Sold out.
About 20 countries. Every single show was sold out. I think the only show that wasn't sold out was when we were in Dallas. We did the Toyota Center or something, which was so huge that normally they get huge rock concerts there. So the way they had to set up the room was, they had to put up some barriers, because it was just so freaking massive. But every other show that we did, whether it was in Denmark or Sweden or Canada or the UK, Ireland, wherever else we went, we sold out. And, you know, to be on tour with the guy. So basically the way the shows went, I would do about 15 minutes of crowd work and jokes and silly stuff up front, because, you know, people were coming to these shows. For those of your audience that don't know Jordan, I mean, Jordan was really helping people get their lives in order. You know, he wrote this book, 12 Rules for Life. And the whole purpose of the book was, you know, clean up your life first. And if you do that, then you can clean up the world. Where right now in the world, we have a lot of people who want to clean up the world, but their own lives are disastrous. So he was doing something reverse of the way we think of it. Like when I watch these Antifa kids and BLM and the rest of these children basically destroying the world, it's like, I'm going to guess that your rooms are pretty dirty. Like, how about get a haircut? How about go to the gym? How about eat a vegetable?
Their necks.
Yeah, exactly.
They got dirty necks.
Yeah, they're very dirty. It's like, take a shower, man. Before you do the looting, could you at least take a shower?
You think they're Soros funded? Is that a fact or is that conspiracy?
I think there is some element of that is true. He puts a lot of money into grassroots progressive organizations that gin up these terrible ideas. I don't know that they're handing cash to rioters, but I think he's seeded a lot of money in these lefty organizations that push these ridiculous ideas. So,
well, I would tell everybody, go Google who George Soros is. If you don't know who he is, you better look into him. There are videos of them actually paying people. I just don't know what to believe anymore. But I want to get back on. So how did you get?
He's a bad dude. He's a bad dude.
How did you get with Jordan Peterson? From what I heard, you had him on a podcast or you had him on an interview, and you kind of just joked, "Let me open up for you," and he said, "Okay."
Yeah, it's a great story, and it tells you everything you need to know about Jordan, because I had him and Ben Shapiro on my show one day, and, you know, my studio at the time was in my garage, and we did about a 2-hour show. And that night was Jordan's, he was going to do one theater show. He had never done one before. And remember, people think of Jordan as like, you know, this Jesus figure, but he was just a psychologist from Toronto. I mean, you know, he's a professor and a clinical psychologist, but it's not like this guy wanted to be a massive star or he wanted to be selling out theaters or anything like that. But that night, he was doing his first ever theater show at the Orpheum in downtown LA. And I did about a 2-hour show with him and Shapiro. And Ben Shapiro, they're both incredible talkers, incredible thinkers, and they're going at it. And I knew that I could have kept going for 5 hours, but I wanted to be respectful. Jordan was doing his first show that night. I said, guys, we got to end this. And then as Jordan was literally walking out of my house, I was like, hey, Jordan, you know, if you want, I'll come down with you tonight. I'll open up. I'll tell a couple lobster jokes and some silly references and get the crowd going for you. And it was as if he didn't have to think about it for a half second. He's like, Dave, that sounds great. Let's do it. I was kind of shocked. I hadn't even been on stage in probably a year. We get down to the Orpheum, downtown LA. It's an old school theater. Probably seats about 2,000 people. And this was the moment that I knew something really kind of special was happening and that I was going to be honored to be part of it. The PA announcer, you know, he welcomes everybody to the 12 Rules for Life event by Dr. Jordan Peterson. And then he goes, and now coming to the stage, host of the Rubin Report, Dave Rubin. And I walked out on that stage and the audience went bananas. And I had no idea, they didn't know I was going to be there. I didn't know if any of these people even knew me. This was when the YouTube thing, it was just all bubbling up. We had no idea. And that moment, it was as if it like infused me with something. And I crushed it up there. I got off stage. The agents, Jordan's agents from CAA were all there. They immediately came up to me. They were like, dude, do you have representation? Because we want you to tour the world with him. And I did have representation, but I was like, I want to work with you guys. And it all happened right there in an instant. 2 weeks later, we were in New York City at the Beacon Theater, which is the theater on the Upper West Side that I had always wanted to perform at. I used to live on the Upper West when I was doing stand-up, and we launched the tour at the theater that I would walk by literally every day for 10 years, from the subway stop to my house, to my apartment. And that was where we started the thing. And then it was a year and a half of just watching this guy fix the world. And we need him now. We need him now. He's going through some stuff. But it was absolutely incredible to see what this guy did.
Would you vote for Peterson if he ran for president?
I like your line of questioning. Would I vote for Peterson if he was running for something? Well, in the Q&As, so the way the shows would go, I would do some funny stuff up top. Jordan would give like an hour and a half lecture, and then I would do like a moderated Q&A for about 45 minutes at the end, where I would kind of ask some questions, and then the audience would ask some questions, and that would come up a lot. Will you run for president? Will you run for this? Now, first off, Jordan's Canadian, so he can't run for president of the United States. But putting that aside, his answer to it was that he felt he could help the world in other ways outside of doing that. But he would never fully say he wouldn't do it. If Jordan ran for something, yes, I would vote for him without question. Without question. I don't know that he's totally suited for it and he's got other things on his plate, but yes, I would vote for him.
But the dude is hard to argue with. I mean, when I watch his videos and listen to his lectures, it's like he's got some solid points. I feel sorry for anybody that goes up against him to try and debate something.
Oh yeah. Well, look, he's debated a ton of people, and there's a million videos on YouTube of him, destroying people and crushing people. And there's that Kathy Newman moment that you've probably seen, and a couple other things. I would say that the best debate that I've seen, the best sort of at loggerheads debate, he did a couple debates with Sam Harris. Sam Harris, obviously an atheist. Jordan is a believer, and they get into really what they're debating really is the nature of truth, the nature of reality. I personally happen to fall more on the Jordan side of the argument, but they really do get into it in a pretty freaking high level. Also, if you like those types of things, you should watch these videos.
I'm going to Google it. So ultimately, the lesson here, folks, is you asked. Like that whole thing, do you think, and obviously that probably brought you a lot of attention, so it helped your career, I would say?
Changed my life. All I did was ask. That's the lesson. You're right.
And all you did was ask, folks. I just did a post the other day about asking. There's too many people out there going through life thinking you have to do it all yourself. You're missing opportunities left and right. And in a case like this, dude, if he would have left and you didn't say shit, who knows what would happen? Who knows where you'd be? But because you said, hey, there's an opportunity, why don't you let me? Did you do it in jest, or were you like, seriously, hey, man, what if I could get on this guy's tour?
It was 50-50. It was half like, oh, I'd love to do it. It'll be fun. But it was half like I was sort of kidding, like, hey, you want me to come up? Like, why the hell not? Like it really was. I saw an opportunity there. So it's not that I didn't see an opportunity, but it really was like, hey, we're kind of doing this thing together. You've been on my show a lot. You want to just see what happens. But you got to ask. You got to see where opportunity is and go for it. And by the way, once you do that once and it works, that starts opening up a world that is absolutely unimaginable to you. Because then, as I said, not only did I get these new agents, and next thing you know, I'm traveling the world with the guy, but we were in Oslo doing one of our biggest shows. And about 5 minutes before we went on stage, I was standing in my dressing room. I got a phone call from my literary agent, and he said, you got the book deal. And I walked into, I couldn't believe it. I walked into Jordan's green room. He's about to go on stage. He's got the mic already attached to him and everything. And I told him, and man, he slapped his hands together. He was in a swivel chair. He spun around in the chair, got up, big hug, big smile. And he was so happy for me. And it's like, man, if I didn't take that one little risk when he was walking out the door of my house, I wouldn't have been on tour with the guy. Most likely I don't get the book deal. And then subsequently from that, I've had a lot of other successes. So you got to start it. You got to make it happen. It's not just it doesn't just fall in your lap for anybody. It doesn't. You got to make it happen.
Recognize opportunity, open your mouth and ask. Don't be afraid to ask favors. There's a lot of people out there think they have to do it on their own. Speaking of book deals, don't burn this book. That's your big book that's out. It's been out, but it's crushing. What's it about?
Well, it's about a lot of this. I mean, in essence, what the book is about is I want people to think for themselves. I lay out everything that I think about politics and my political philosophy and sort of the stuff we started talking about individual rights and light touch of government. But I lay out all my theory, my ideas on abortion and taxes and the rest of it. And the purpose of the book is not to convince you of anything. I'm not there to convince you to be pro-choice or pro-life,
What are
or
you?
I make an art. I'm what I call begrudgingly pro-choice. I don't think it's a good choice to have to make, but I think within the first trimester, I think I'm not denying it's a life. A lot of lefties deny it's a life. A lot of lefties now want 8-month abortions and post-birth abortions and some seriously extreme stuff.
Post-birth?
Yeah, post-birth.
That's
That's an actual
called a
phrase
murder.
now. Yeah, it's called precisely, but it's an actual phrase now. There's a pretty disturbing video of, I believe it's Governor Ralph Northam from, is he Virginia? I think it's Virginia, where he talks about post-birth abortions. I mean, it's disturbing stuff.
Is that what they're calling it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not
Post-birth?
making this up. Google post-birth abortions. Yeah. But putting aside post-birth abortions, the idea that you could have an abortion at 8 months and that should be okay, or it should be lauded, is crazy. So I take a first trimester approach on it. As I said, I don't deny that it's life. And what I talk about in the book is the constant battle. If you believe in the individual, then you want to give the woman as much choice as possible, and you hope that she's involving the man that's involved. At the same time, if you believe in the individual, well, that fetus is an individual too, and you have to have that honest conversation about which and when does one take primacy over the other one. But the point is, I'm not trying to convince anyone to be pro-choice or pro-life. I'm just telling you, this is how I look at the world, and these are the conclusions I've come to. But the purpose of the book, as the subtitle says, is to think for yourself. We live in a time where everyone's afraid to say what they think. We live in the freest freaking country in the history of the world, and good people are afraid to say what they think. And the more that you are quiet about what you think, the more you give room for the mob to come get you. So if you start saying what you think, I guarantee you will feel better and be stronger and more confident than if you don't do that. There's just no question.
What about the haters?
Oh, you're going to get them. You're going to get them. And by the way, they might even be in your family. They might be your friends. You're going to lose friends. I guarantee you. I talk about that in the book. You're going to have people turn on you. You might have people try to contact your employer. You're going to get mobbed online. So I'm not pretending this is some like magically wonderful road to pure happiness. But I think what it is a road to is purpose. Meaning that if you fight for what you believe, you will find purpose within that. And then you have no idea what opportunities will come. But it's going to come with a cost. Look, if it was easy, everyone would do it, right? So there's a reason. I get why people are quiet. But, as I've said before, to me, if you're quiet, if you see bad things happening in the world and you're quiet, well, then what are you doing? You're basically saying, all right, I'm going to put my head in the sand like the ostrich. I'm going to put my head in the sand, and then hopefully it'll bypass me. I'll be okay. Sure, it's going to wreck the whole world and everybody else, but I'll be okay. But in essence, what you are then is you're the frog in the slowly boiling pot. And it does not end well for the frog. It just takes a little longer for the frog to get boiled. And I think that a lot of people are doing that. And what we want is people to just get up. Look, if you disagree with me on anything that I've said here, anyone listening to this, if you disagree with me, and you send me a letter or a tweet or whatever saying, Dave, I heard what you said on dropping bombs, but that thing about the flat tax, like that doesn't make any sense to me, blah, blah. I'll talk to you about it. I'll bring it up on a show.
What about it?
What?
What about it?
Well, I would have to know what they thought was wrong with.
Well, flat tax. Are you for flat tax?
I'm for a flat tax for sure, with some minor adjustments. So I think basically it's 18% across the board. I think you could give people the lowest, let's say people under about 50 grand, I think you could give them a free ride. I don't know that that's even morally right or economically right, but that would be my way of throwing a little bone to the lefties on this. So you take care of the people who need it the most so they can keep the most in their pocket. The huge swath of everybody else pays exactly the same 18%. And then to even show I'm a good guy, because I gave the break for the poorest, if you're making over like 5 million a year, maybe you can bump up to 21%, but that's it. And I don't even know that that's economically sound. In many cases, I can show you a lot of evidence that it isn't. But that would be a way of also saying to the lefties, okay, we're gonna take a little more from the rich, and we're gonna take care of the poor, and everyone else is gonna pay the same. That is at least in proximity to something that seems fair to me. But I don't think we should be punishing people for making money. And you know this, and I know this. Look, I'm a small businessman. The more taxes that I pay in this crazy state of California, the less people I can hire. If my taxes were cut tomorrow, I know I would hire more people. Simple as that.
So would I. So have I. Because Trump did cut taxes. Again, I'm a little embarrassed on a few occasions with Trump. The way he tweets and just how he behaves. It's not real presidential. But I said, man, I don't know, but I'll tell you what. If my taxes get lowered, then I'm going to love the dude. And sure enough, the taxes got lowered. He's a businessman. This country is a business, whether you like it or not. And ultimately, I think as long as you're not a politician, then I'm voting for you or I'm for you. You and I see a lot of the similar, like abortions, same thing with me. I mean, I don't know if people are going to hate me for it, and I didn't know people were against flat tax. Like, who would be against flat tax? Like, that's the easiest way to do it in the whole wide world. I would say 20%.
Yeah, but the lefties, hate it because what they want to do, they believe that we should be taking more from certain people and redistributing it to other people. That's the reverse of the flat tax. And that's a very, when I say I believe in individual rights, I want everyone to be treated the same under the law. So I don't think you should punish people for success. So I think a flat tax is simply the only way you can treat the bulk of the people exactly the same. And that's, by the way, that's why I said when I'm letting the poor people off the hook and I'm sort of upping it for the other people, it's not because I think it's morally right. And it's not because I think it's economically right. It's because politics is about negotiation. So that's my way of throwing the guys who I disagree with a bone. Unfortunately, they rarely throw the other people a bone. So that's the problem there. But yes, you're totally right. A flat tax, it would eliminate the tax code. It would be simple. We'd all feel like we're equal. It makes so much sense that it can't be a policy because policies can't make that much sense.
Yeah, I wouldn't throw either side a bone. Like 20% across the board, you make $1, I want 20 cents. I don't give a fuck if you had 13 kids and you're single. Like, you shouldn't have been fucking. At the end of the day, flat tax makes perfect sense because whether you make $1 trillion, you pay 20%. You make $100, you pay 20%. The rest, to take care of our poor, I would think that's called donation and charitable donations. And I think there's a lot of people that do that. So the government,
I think that's totally legit.
Yeah, and if the government,
what you just laid out there is totally legit. So what you're laying out there, I think, is like the purest standpoint, which I think is honest and forthright and all that. What I was laying out was, all right, but I got to make some kind of compromise with the people I disagree with. So I'll just give you guys that. But I totally hear you on that. I totally hear you.
Well, not only that, bro, you're famous. I'm an unknown. Nobody knows me. I'm allowed to say whatever I want. Once you get in a position like you could be literally not snuffed out like physically, but like if somebody didn't like you, they could just press a button and you'd disappear, wouldn't you?
Man, you have been doing a lot of this QAnon stuff, huh?
Well, dude, listen, I mean, who decides whether, again, YouTube can shut you down? I did a podcast with this guy named Dr. Rashid Buttar. You ever heard of him?
No.
He's basically saying the masks are bullshit. They don't work. The COVID's, half bullshit. They're trying to hurt us. More conspiracy than anything. But I just did a podcast because I'll do a podcast with people that I think my people want to listen to and or hear from. And I put it on YouTube. I got 1 million, maybe 4 in about 3 days. And then they removed it. They just flat removed it. So if you piss somebody off.
And what did they tell you? What did they say?
They didn't say
the message that you got.
Well, it was, it goes against their community standards. But at the end of the day, it was just there one day, gone the next, and it was unbelievable. And I'm thinking to myself, see, now again, YouTube can determine. And by the way, I'm like you. I'm as fair as they get, Dave. Like, for example, someone was bitching about free speech on Facebook, and I'm like, dude, somebody owns that technology. Like, I have a technology company. I don't make money from my podcast, although people are starting to, offer me money to be on it. Is that a good thing? Or, I mean, is that? I'll talk.
Success is good, man.
I'll pick your brain later about the podcast and the YouTube because I've got a little seedling started. I think I could, if I knew what I was doing, I could blow that up. But YouTube, it's YouTube's platform, man. If they don't like what you're saying, I think they've got the right to shut you down. Why? It's not a government thing. But what I don't understand is why the president of the United States doesn't have his own or her own channel to address the public. That way you can't, kind of be misled by the media. The media's got too much power, I think. Way too much power.
Well, look, I philosophically, I'm completely with you on this stuff. It's like, I don't want the government coming in to regulate YouTube. I mean, people say that as if, okay, that's going to make some sort of sense. But really, if you think about it, picture a government regulator, when the gas guy comes to your house to look at the gas meter. Is this the guy who knows the most about gas, who's really enthused about life and is thinking about the world in an interesting way and everything else? I'm not trying to offend the gas man, but the point is government regulators are just middle management, bureaucratic nothingness. So go to any government website, really, anyone watching this right now, pause it for a sec, go to a government website and look at the website. And guess what? The website is pretty shitty. Their drop-down menus look like AOL from 1999. The images are old, the things are all misshapen and out. If you want those people, the people who designed that nonsense, if you want the people who built the Obamacare website that crashed endlessly for a year and a half, if you want them regulating YouTube, A, as if they could do it, and B, as if they should do it, well, nothing good is going to come from that. So I also have a tech company called locals.com, and we've built some stuff so that creators can be independent. So you actually should totally check that out. It might be a good opportunity for you to locals.com. Yeah. And we're building basically digital homes for creators. So it's subscription based. We've got a great video player, great audio player, news feed. It's a really beautiful little thing that we built, and it's gaining momentum. And I raised a bunch of money for it, and I'm really proud of what we built. That's one alternative.
No censorship.
One of the things that Trump, it's up to you. So it's your community. We're a tech company. We're giving you the tools to build your community. If people come into your community and you don't want them there, you can kick them out. But that's up to you. The same way you're for free speech, but you don't invite everybody into your home to say whatever the hell they want. But it's basic. That's why I call them digital homes.
But if there was a group on there, say a big racist group, you wouldn't shut them down. You just, hey, that's them, I guess.
I personally wouldn't shut them down. If you're not breaking the laws of the United States, you're allowed to be on there. Now, one of the things that oddly protects us in a certain regard is that the payment processor that we use is Stripe, which, everybody's using Stripe these days. Not everyone can get a Stripe account. So let's say a really far right or racist group came on, started using our tech. Well, we use we use Stripe to do the payment processing. If they can't get an account with Stripe, then they really have no need to be on Locals. So, I'm doing the best I can with the stuff that exists out there. And I think that's all you can try to do to innovate. You can't solve everybody's problems all the time. I think we've solved probably 95% of people's problems. So, the people that create this kind of stuff.
How did you get locals.com? Like that sounds like a freaking expensive one.
That was pretty good, right? One of my business partners, who actually was a fan of mine originally, who contacted me one day and said, Dave, I've been around doing internet stuff for years. He's actually one of the original pioneers of social media and networks and things like that. He called me, or he emailed me originally, and he said, hey, Dave, if you ever think of something interesting and a business opportunity, let me know. I came to him with the idea of Locals, and I had another business partner involved. And it wasn't called Locals at the time. We were calling it something else. And he said, I happen to own the domain locals.com. That might work for this. And that's how we got it.
That's a huge name. And I can tell you guys, the same way dropping bombs, everybody always says, how'd you get dropping bombs? I don't know, man. I thought of the name and I thought of the name and I Googled, or I did the old GoDaddy thing and it was available. I'm like, shit, I got to take that. I've been offered $10,000. Not that that's a bunch of money, but it's a good name. But Locals, man, that sounds like one of those multi-million-dollar names, because that could go for anything.
Isn't it a beautiful thing when you go to GoDaddy.com and you put dropping bombs in there and you're like, holy shit, the .com, it's there. Like, you can't believe it, because usually you put anything in at this point and everything's taken. So they give you .xyz and blah, blah, blah. But when you see the thing that you want, that's like finding gold back in the gold rush.
It is. Hey, I know you got to get going. I appreciate the time today. Folks, if you guys are not already interested in checking this dude out, then you're probably smoking some of that hardcore crack. RubinReport.com, locals.com if you're an influencer, if you've got I would say any kind of platform or thing to stand upon, say, if you want shit to say, locals.com. I'm going to go check that out as well. Also, Don't Burn This Book. We didn't get a big chance to talk too much about that book, but I'm going to go buy it. I'm interested in it. Don't Burn This Book. Where do they get that? Amazon, everywhere there's books, or do you send them to a website?
You can go to Amazon. You can go to don'tburnthisbook.com. And I told you right before we started that I've only been to Vegas once, and I stayed at Circus. It was, I think I saw 7 murders that night. I mean, it was just an absolute debacle. So next time I'm in Vegas, we got to go to some primo something or other.
100%, dude. Not only that, like, I'd love to have you in the studio instead of through the Zoom. Zooms are, I guess, all right, but unless you're a bigwig like you, Dave, I normally say no Zooms. But man, I'm in this case, I didn't want to miss the opportunity to share you with the guests or with the Bomb Squad. Folks, you can follow them on Twitter at, is it Rubin Report?
It is.
At Rubin Report. You're also at Rubin Report on Instagram. You guys can't miss him. Go to YouTube, subscribe to his channel, do what you can. Throw him a hashtag Bomb Squad. Let him know that, you support everything he's doing, or tell him to fuck off. That's up to you. Share this out with everybody.
That's fine too. Keep me honest,
Yeah, keep him honest. Dave, I appreciate you coming on. Folks, share this out with everybody. Make sure that you go vote for your local government and, obviously vote Trump. Till next time, kids, keep it real.